The other day I was talking with a friend of mine who, like me, has spent many years living overseas. And we began talking about how we don't often speak about how hard and lonely the experience can be while we're adjusting to a foreign land. It's not that I'm trying to hide anything, but when I share my overseas adventures with others, I'll spend anywhere from 5 minutes to a half hour on the topic, so that I tend to give a condensed version of events, focusing on the best parts. For people who haven't lived abroad, I'm afraid that I unwittingly make the whole affair seem terribly romantic and exotic, which it is much of the time. However, that's not the whole story.
Actually, despite the fact that I spent much of my childhood living abroad, because of an illness which has left me mostly housebound for over 17 years, I had forgotten so much about those hard parts of going to live overseas. But when I was well enough to follow my dream of living here in Paris part of each year, those memories came rushing back like a flood. The word often used to describe what I'm talking about is culture shock, and it refers to the difficult adjustments one must make while adapting to life in a foreign land. The first phase of setting off to live overseas tends to be the honeymoon. It's a phase where much about my new country enchants and delights me. When I travel to another country as a tourist on vacation, I usually get to stay in this happy state because I'm only in the country a short time, and I don't have to do real-life things, such as looking for doctors or work or making friends. In short, I don't have to create a life there. In the next phase of culture shock, the honeymoon ends, and the reality of all that's involved in adapting to a new country starts to sink in. It's a place where, my friend and I both admitted, we find ourselves saying, "What was I thinking when I got the bright idea to do this?" There are still moments of joy and adventure, to be sure, but it's also an emotional roller coaster where the highs are higher and the lows are lower. I hate to be the one to tell you this, but when I go to live abroad, many of life's daily tasks and challenges become more stressful and time-consuming, at least for the first year or two. And until I make new friends that have known them a long while, not only can the experience be lonely, but I don't have my usual support system. For example, being able to share my troubles with a friend over a cup of tea. Well, this makes it even more difficult, to be sure. In Paris, I found that even something as mundane as making a doctor's appointment by telephone can be surprisingly stressful and tiring. It's more difficult because I'm making the appointment in a language I haven't yet mastered. The sound isn't as clear over the telephone, and I don't have the extra help of reading the receptionist's lips. Then, when the receptionist quickly throws out available appointment times, she uses military time. So I frantically try to do the math to figure out which time she's talking about. But while preoccupied with calculating time, I can't translate her French. All of a sudden, she's 4 or 5 sentences down the road, and I'm completely confused. And as I'm often feeling sick when making the appointment, it's critical that I get everything right if I'm going to get help. My days can be filled with 1,001 such small things, and on some days it can overwhelm me. As a result, I've tended to be more insecure in Paris, largely because my days are peppered with those simple tasks I don't know how to do. There are so many things I don't understand, especially because I'm conducting my life in a language I haven't yet mastered. When my family lived in Egypt, we knew of some Americans who had nervous breakdowns during the phase of shock, and they had to return home. Ironically, I have an American friend here in Paris who at one time also lived in Cairo, and she found it much harder to adjust to Paris than to Cairo. The main reason, she said, was that when she went to live in Cairo, she realized that the culture would be very different, and so it would take much time to adjust. But since she had always loved her holidays in France, and because she assumed that the French have more in common with Americans than they really do, she didn't expect to experience so much culture shock in Paris, so it made the adjustment process worse. I made the same mistake.
For me, the grand finale of culture shock often occurs when I return home to the United States. This part can be the most challenging because living abroad often changes me forever. I no longer see the world in the same way. I come home a different person. Once again, all of those changes must be processed and adjusted to. I didn't think this would happen from living in Paris for only 4 months a year, but somehow it has. The simple truth is that living in Paris part-time has altered my world in ways both wonderful and challenging.
You might ask, why do I still want to live abroad? Because I've found that if I can just endure the hard parts, many of which occur in the beginning, I love experiencing another culture at a deeper level, in particular the way that it enriches me and my life forever. More importantly, this Paris experience has been all the more precious to me because my illness had previously narrowed my world so drastically. Another reason I choose to be a resident here instead of a tourist is that my illness makes moving around and traveling to new places difficult. Beforehand, I would have to research where I could stay without aggravating my illness, which healthcare providers might help me, and so forth. It's all too exhausting for words. But if I were contemplating living abroad again, here is the question I would ask myself. Do I want to go to Paris and have a honeymoon experience, one wherein I return home the same person and life easily picks up where it left off? Or would I rather experience the culture at a deeper level, even if it might draw additional challenges into my life for years?
I don't think one experience is better than the other, for each has its merits. Sometimes life beats us down and we just need the more carefree, relaxing experience of being a tourist. But for now, I've chosen to live abroad even with its small struggles. And because of my illness, even on my hardest days, it seems like a miracle that I'm able to be here at all.
Would you like to know why I'm having a much better experience my 4th time back in Paris? Then watch my video, What Does No Really Mean in Paris?